There is a country where millions of people work more than 12 hours a day for less than $3 to make the clothes you are wearing right now. A place where sleeping with 10 people in one room is considered a privilege, because for many, the only option is to live among garbage and sewage. A country where rivers are stained the color of the world's fashionable clothing, and where a man can have up to 4 wives, if he can afford them. A territory that was born after one of the worst natural disasters in history, with mangroves so dangerous that those who live there wear a mask on the back of their neck because a deadly predator attacks them from behind. That country exists, and it's called Bangladesh. Sit back, open your eyes wide, and hit like, because in this new video from Uncensored World, we travel to what many consider the dirtiest country in the world. Let's get started. In one of the densest and most vulnerable corners of the planet stands a young country, born between water and loss, a territory capable of feeding millions and destroying everything in a matter of hours. For some, a fertile paradise. For others, a veritable hell on earth. Bangladesh is one of the youngest countries on earth, having been born just a few decades ago. But it was not born out of a diplomatic agreement or an agreed transition, but out of a catastrophe that changed the fate of millions of people in a matter of hours. It all began on November 13th, 1970, when a cyclone began to form in the warm waters of the Bay of Bengal that would go down in history as Cyclone Bola. It was not the first storm to hit this region, which had always been accustomed to the fury of the weather. But that night, the wind and the sea left no room for routine or hope. What followed was one of the deadliest natural disasters of the 20th century. It is estimated that between 300,000 and 500,000 people lost their lives in that catastrophe. Entire villages disappeared underwater. Entire families were wiped out without warning. The Ganges Delta, one of the most fertile regions on the planet and the cradle of what is now Bangladesh, was transformed into a landscape of destruction and silence. But the wind was not solely responsible. At that time, Bangladesh was not yet Bangladesh. It was part of Pakistan, a young country that, after the partition of British India, had been divided into 2 territories separated by thousands of kilometers, West Pakistan and East Pakistan, the latter being what we now know as Bangladesh. Although they shared the same religion, the geographical, cultural, and economic distance between them was evident. For years, many inhabitants of the East had felt that power and resources were concentrated in the western part of the country, while East Pakistan was relegated to the background. When the cyclone devastated the delta, the response of the central government, located in West Pakistan, was perceived as slow, distant, and deeply negligent. Not only was there a lack of immediate aid, there was a lack of presence, there was a lack of sensitivity. And the feeling of abandonment ignited a wound that had been open for some time. That is why Cyclone Bola did not just destroy villages. It destroyed the patience of a people who already felt ignored. After the disaster, East Pakistan spoke clearly at the polls. The majority chose a project that demanded autonomy, justice, and recognition, but their will was not respected. The feeling of abandonment turned into outrage, and the outrage turned into a brutal and deadly confrontation. In March 1971, a war began that would forever change the map of the region. When it ended on December 16th of that same year, Bangladesh was no longer a forgotten part of another country. It was a nation born of conflict and loss. And that is how Bangladesh was born out of catastrophe. First from the devastation of water, and then from political conflict. But what is most disturbing is that this relationship with water did not end in 1971. In fact, it has never ended. Later in this journey, you will discover that in Bangladesh there are communities that have learned to live literally on the water, because every year the water returns to these lands, and its power is immense. For all these reasons, the country's identity is marked by that collective memory, surviving when all seems lost. A reality that people face every day as if it were normal. And perhaps it is no coincidence that this country is located in one of the most vulnerable deltas on the planet. The confluence of large rivers and its proximity to the sea make it an extraordinarily productive land, rich in fishing and agriculture, but also permanently exposed to floods and cyclones. Here, nature feeds, but never ceases to threaten. Today, more than 160 million people live in a territory that is more than 13 times smaller than Mexico. With a density of approximately 1,265 people per square kilometer, Bangladesh is one of the most densely populated places on the planet. To understand what that means, just imagine the following. If the United States had the same population density, there would be not just over 300 million people living there, but more than 4 billion. That's more than the combined populations of China and India today. This is not just demographics, and as you can imagine, this is not just a number. It is constant pressure on every square meter. Pressure that is not only measured in numbers, but in shared space, cities that grow faster than they can be organized, and in makeshift neighborhoods where tin and mud replace planning, overcrowded hospitals and shops, and waste that accumulates faster than solutions. A constant struggle for every square meter. And when land is scarce and water is never far away, survival takes on forms that may seem difficult to understand from the outside. But that cyclone was not the last blow this nation would receive. If nature marked its birth, human density would mark its present. Before we continue, a quick question. From which country are you viewing this right now? As you can see here, where space is limited and pressure is constant, there are neighborhoods that concentrate many more people in a single square kilometer than entire cities, such as yours. One of those places is in the capital, Dhaka, a neighborhood built on mud and tin sheets, where more than 100,000 people share just 1 square kilometer. It is called Karayal slum, and for more than 100,000 people, it is not a statistic. It is their only option. Here, life takes on forms that, seen from the outside, can be difficult to imagine. The corridors are narrow, irregular, and damp. The dwellings are built with tin, reused wood, and tarpaulins stretched out against the rain. There is no planning, only necessity. The walls seem to lean on each other to keep from falling. 10 people and sometimes more can sleep in a single room. The same space is used for resting, cooking, bathing, and living. There is no privacy, but having 4 walls and a roof here is not poverty. It is a privilege. Many cannot afford it and must build what becomes their homes under a nearby bridge or next to canals where the water is not clean, but a constant mixture of waste and debris. Sewage streams are part of the everyday landscape in Karayal. So are rats. The smell is permanent, not always unbearable, but constant. As a reminder that this place was never meant to sustain so much life. In this environment, many people survive on less than $1 a day. The smell is permanent, not always unbearable, but constant. A reminder that this place was never meant to sustain so much life. In this environment, many people survive on less than $1 a day, the margin with which they must decide between food, transportation, or life. In places like this, street food is a constant. Small, improvised stalls offer rice, fried foods, or fish on tables or metal pans exposed to dust, insects, smoke, and constant dirt. But for those who live here, this is simply what there is. Living with waste, mud, and contaminated water is routine. Children play in corridors where the floor changes with the rain. Families adapt. They adjust. They resist. And yet even here there is organization, small businesses, informal support networks, improvised electricity connections. Life finds a way among tangled cables and tin roofs. Much of this is because Karayal is so densely populated that it concentrates more than 100,000 people in just 1 square kilometer. Proportionally, it would be as if more than 700 people lived permanently on a soccer field. If a city like New York had the same density as this neighborhood, not 8 million people would live there, but nearly 78 million. As you can understand, this is not just overcrowding. It is a way of life compressed to the limit. And yet, Karayal is not the most difficult place in the country. There are places where there is not even any ground, and we will see them in a few minutes. If you have been struck by this reality, please give us a like. It is the best support for us to continue bringing you these stories. In Bangladesh, the pressure can be suffocating. Life here, in many neighborhoods, is lived to the limit of what is possible. And yet, in this same country, the law allows a man to marry up to 4 women, a tradition that is still in force, even though the state has begun to introduce economic mechanisms to limit it. Because here, each additional wife means a higher price. Later on, we will understand how this system works and why it exists. The neighborhood of Korail is no exception. It is the visible consequence of a country where space has become the scarcest resource. And when millions live like this, the question is not only how they survive, but who sustains the economy that keeps the rest of the country going. The answer is not far from you. You probably wear it. The answer is in clothing. Perhaps not everyone knows this, but Bangladesh is one of the world's largest clothing exporters. T-shirts, pants, dresses, jackets, garments that travel thousands of miles to brightly lit shop windows and air-conditioned stores. Here, the textile industry is not just another sector, it is the economic heart of the country. Millions of people work in factories where the working day easily exceeds 12 hours. But despite this, their minimum wage is around $90 a month when converted to international currency. It's not an impressive figure. But for many workers who come from neighborhoods like Korail or from agricultural regions, where income is irregular and often lower, this salary represents something they haven't always had: stability. It's not prosperity, it's industrialized survival. Most work in gray buildings lined up in industrial zones that spread out on the outskirts of Dhaka, the capital, and other cities. There, thousands of men and women sew, cut, and create garments destined for foreign markets. The t-shirt you are wearing was probably made here. The country's economy depends heavily on this sector. Labor is competitive, costs are low, and production is attractive to international brands that outsource much of their processes here. From the outside, the system seems efficient. It produces quickly, it produces a lot, it produces cheaply, it works. But no system works without incurring a cost. The pressure to produce more, faster, and cheaper has left visible scars on the environment. Industrial waste, especially textile dyes, often finds its way into nearby rivers. One of them is the Buriganga River. For decades, this river has received direct discharges from factories and tanneries. The result is not always invisible. Some days the water is dyed blue, others dark red, sometimes almost black. The color is not a result of the whims of the weather, but of market demand. That is why this river changes color according to the shade that is in fashion in the West. Those who live nearby continue to use this water for everyday activities, not always because they want to, but because there is no sufficient alternative. The contrast is hard to ignore. Clean clothes, perfectly folded, labeled with recognizable brands, and a river whose surface reflects the environmental cost of that cleanliness. A country capable of becoming the world's factory, and at the same time one of the territories most vulnerable to its own industrial consequences. That's why, while the rivers absorb the color of the season, millions continue to sow in silence. It may seem like a distant connection, but the decisions made in a shopping mall thousands of miles away can end up being reflected in the water of a river like this one. The question is simple. Would you continue to buy the same? Or would something change after knowing this? But Bangladesh is not just industry nor rivers stained by the season. This country sits on one of the most biodiverse regions on the planet. The confluence of large rivers, the sediments they carry from the Himalayas, and the constant proximity of the sea have created a fertile, lush land, almost overflowing with life. At the southern tip is Cox's Bazar, a strip of sand that stretches for more than 120 kilometers along the Bay of Bengal. It is considered the longest continuous natural beach in the world. Here, the water is blue, the sand is golden. Families stroll at sunset and the horizon seems clear of any industrial shadows. The contrast is hard to ignore. From the dark water of an urban river to the open, infinite sea. But beauty in Bangladesh is never alone. To the west of this coast begins the largest mangrove forest on the planet. the Sundarbans, a network of routes emerging from brackish water, narrow channels, and dense vegetation where land and sea merge. It is an extraordinary ecosystem, and also one of the most unpredictable. This is where the Bengal tiger lives, not as a tourist symbol, as a real presence. Workers who venture into the mangrove forest, fishermen, honey or wood collectors, wear human masks placed on the back of their necks, not out of tradition, but as a survival strategy. The tiger usually attacks from behind. The mask seeks to create the illusion that the man is looking in both directions, but it doesn't always work. Attacks are reported every year. Some return injured, others do not return. And yet they return to the forest. Because the mangrove feeds them, it provides resources. It sustains entire communities. Nature here is generous and demanding. Let's leave you with a brief reflection. Would you dare to enter a place where danger can strike without warning from behind at any moment? Do you know of any places like that? Think about it for a moment. And if the mangrove forest represents the wild side of nature, on the East Coast, there is another equally breathtaking landscape. On the beaches of Chittagong, the horizon is not marked by palm trees, but by rusty hulls. Giants of the sea run aground here to be dismantled under the sun, one after another. It is one of the largest ship graveyards in the world. Giant oil tankers and rusty cargo ships deliberately run aground on the sand to be dismantled piece by piece. Not by sophisticated machinery, by men. Workers who cut steel under the sun, often without adequate protection, exposed to gases, heavy metals, and constant risks of collapse or explosion. It is considered one of the most dangerous jobs on the planet. Here, it is not just steel that is recycled. Lives are risked every day. Because, although they risk their lives in places like the ship graveyard, for thousands of families that daily risk represents a source of income. Income that supports large households in a country where the family structure remains complex and sometimes difficult to understand from the outside. And amid this constant economic pressure, there is a tradition that, seen from the outside, seems impossible, but remains legal. Because in Bangladesh, the law allows a man to marry up to 4 women. But not without conditions. In Bangladesh, where the majority of the population is Muslim, Islamic law allows a man to marry up to 4 women, provided he can treat them equally and guarantee their livelihood. It is not a widespread practice in modern cities, but it exists, and it is legal within that religious framework. However, civil law introduces nuances. In the capital, municipal authorities have established economic fees that increase with each additional marriage. The first wife involves a symbolic cost. The second raises the figure considerably. The third and fourth involve much higher amounts. The aim is not to ban the practice. It is to make it less accessible. In economic terms, the message is clear. Each additional wife will come at an increasing price. In a country where the monthly salary of many workers barely exceeds $90, maintaining several households is not just a religious or cultural issue. It is, above all, a financial issue. But it is worth debunking a widespread idea. Most men in Bangladesh do not have multiple wives. The practice is legal within the Islamic framework, but it is a minority practice in contemporary urban reality. Those who opt for multiple marriages are usually found in rural contexts, conservative environments, or specific family situations. In some cases, men with greater economic resources can take on this responsibility. In others, the decision is based on traditional family agreements, widowhood, or social dynamics specific to certain communities. In most cases, it is not an ostentatious luxury. It is a different family structure. And you, would you like to have 4 wives or 4 husbands? We imagine it must not be easy. Women who are part of these marriages live very different realities. Some share a home, others live in separate houses. Religious law requires equal treatment and support, although in practice this balance is not always easy to achieve. In large cities, this practice is becoming less common. Many women study, work, and make their own decisions. Urban life has changed the rules of the game. In villages and rural areas, however, traditions continue to carry more weight. There, multiple marriages may be seen as more normal within certain communities. Bangladesh is not a country that thinks in a single way. There are young people who look to the future, families who maintain ancient customs, and people who live between both worlds. That is why the tax system does not seek to ban the tradition. It seeks to put a practical limit on it. Because when maintaining a single household is already difficult, supporting several ceases to be a cultural issue and becomes an economic challenge. Religion allows up to 4 wives. The economy for most barely allows 1, and caught between these 2 forces, millions of families make decisions that may seem difficult to understand from the outside. And perhaps that is the word that best defines Bangladesh: the search for balance. A country born out of catastrophe and still facing floods and storms every year. A territory where the land is fertile, but unstable. Where the economy is growing rapidly in South Asia, while millions continue to live in precarious conditions. In recent years, there has been good news, as Bangladesh has been among the fastest growing economies in the region. New infrastructure, export industry, advances in microcredit, and social development have changed the landscape in many cities. But as you can imagine, growth is not always evenly distributed. While some move forward, others continue to struggle for space, for wages, for clean water. And that is the constant paradox. A country that is moving forward and at the same time resisting with what it has. But there is a reality that runs through everything you have seen so far. Bangladesh was not only born out of water and natural disaster, it continues to live with it. Much of the country is made up of floodplains, low-lying, fertile land crossed by rivers that flow down from the Himalayas and spread out before reaching the sea. That fertility feeds millions. But every monsoon season reminds us that this same geography is fragile. Floods are not exceptional. They are cyclical. Every year, large areas are covered by water. Many fields disappear under the mud. Many roads are transformed into canals, and entire houses must be rebuilt over and over again. Millions of people are displaced periodically. Some return when the water recedes. Others migrate to cities like Dhaka. And so begins a silent cycle that connects directly to neighborhoods like Korail. But there are communities that do not wait for the water to recede. They adapt to it. In regions in the south and center of the country, such as Barisal or Gaibandha, where water marks the calendar and the monsoon redefines the landscape every year. There are villages built on bamboo and wooden platforms that rise when the water level rises. There, houses do not stand on solid ground, but float or are supported by structures designed to coexist with the flooding. Markets are not at the end of a street, but slowly advance between canals, and floating gardens allow crops to be grown even when the soil has disappeared underwater. Here, school is not a few blocks away, but across a canal that must be crossed by boat. Many children learn to row before they learn to write. Every morning, small boats cross the currents, carrying students to classrooms that also float or rise above the changing water level. Routine is not measured by streets or sidewalks, but by tides. Life goes on even when the ground is no longer firm. However, adapting does not mean being safe. Storms can intensify, currents can change direction, and platforms can give way under pressure. Uncertainty is as much a part of the landscape as the water itself. For all these reasons, Bangladesh is one of the countries most vulnerable to climate change in the world. Sea levels are slowly rising, floods recur every season, and pressure on the land grows year after year, not only because of the water, also because of the human density. More than 160 million people live in a territory smaller than many European countries, and every few seconds a new inhabitant is born, who will have to find their place in a land where space is limited. That doesn't make the country the most populous in the world, but it does make it one of the most crowded. Meanwhile, millions of people continue to negotiate with water, not from theory or from headlines, but from the most intimate place possible, their own homes. And perhaps that is what defines Bangladesh. A country born of water that faces it again every year, a territory that feeds millions, and at the same time demands that they resist. Nothing here is completely stable. Not the land, not the economy, not even the future. And yet life goes on. Because Bangladesh is not just a place, it is a way of adapting when the ground shifts beneath your feet. After seeing all this, if you were born here, with your family, with your history, would you leave if you could? Or would you try to adapt? We look forward to reading your comments. If this trip has made you look at the map with new eyes, leave us a like. It helps us continue to share stories that are not always told. And if you want to continue discovering extreme countries and realities that almost no one shows, the next trip is already on screen. Click on it, you're going to enjoy it.